We are now 2 NFL Sundays in, and it's been a lot of bad quarterback play across the league. I'm going to break it all down team by team and how dire each situation is on this episode of the Scho-Zone. All right, everybody, welcome to the Scho-Zone. It's your host, Ryan Schofield, coming at you live from Albany, New York, in my little makeshift studio we're running here. Don't worry, some plans are underway to try and improve this a little bit. David Eckstein's not quite visible. We'll get him out of there. So we are not all the way through week 2 of the NFL season. We still have Monday Night Football coming on later, but I don't really watch during the day on Sunday. I just kind of watch everything in the condensed highlights that I see, and I consume the clips that we get posted to the social media. I don't really feel like I'm missing out on much. I say this is that I still watch the 4 o'clock game and the Sunday night game and the Thursday game and the Monday day. I do unfortunately miss most of the games because for some strange reason, the NFL likes to have all of their games scheduled at 1 o'clock and like none of them afterwards, which I wish I had brought that up last week on my episode with Nick C. If you are on the West Coast, your football watching experience happens from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon for the most part when we have only a few afternoon games. It's been a real lot of bad quarterback play. I posted last week that, or even talked about with Nick, how there were down from 2019. They had 62 touchdown passes in week 1. Last week, I think they finished up with 36 maybe or something, which was also pretty consistent with the year before, which was like 37. That was just on week 1s. I didn't look at week 2s from season to season. We had 28 touchdown passes yesterday. So unless Kirk Cousins and Jalen Hurts light up the board today, it's going to be a step backwards in that regards. Overall, just seems like scoring is even down in the league. I haven't really looked at that. That's just the perception that I have as a viewer. And when I'm watching it, I think it just really has a lot to do with the quarterbacks. Now, when I brought up that point to people on my own social medias, which again, you can follow and join me through the bottom line there. After you see all the ballparks, yes, if I've been a subscriber to the show, you probably got roped in through my baseball stuff, but baseball doesn't have too much going on to it. I'm just going to mostly be talking football until we get to the playoffs in baseball. But through the quarterback lenses, I think I'm saying a lot of people are saying, oh, well, there's just more running quarterbacks. Well, they're not running for touchdowns. I mean, they ran for a few more touchdowns than they did over the years. There were 7 quarterback rushing touchdowns last week, as opposed to like 2 or 3 that happened in 2019, not quite accounting for all of that. I think what we're really having is the problem in the NFL right now is that we built a rule set and catered the game. And the way that the math of things have understood is that passing the ball has trumped running the ball. We find it to be a more efficient medium. And then the problem is that we now draft quarterbacks who aren't necessarily as good at throwing the ball as they are at running with their legs. And this is the product that we have out there. And if you watch college, it's only getting worse. But I'm just going to go through. I'm going to break it down team by team. I guess we'll start first with alphabetically. I think we got I'm going to pull up the list of teams right now, or maybe I'll just go through game by game. But if we were just to start with an A team, I would say Arizona. We're going to start there with Arizona. Kyler Murray, this is the way I'm going to answer a guy like Kyler Murray, who's been in the league for as many years as he's been. If we still can't answer the question as to whether or not he's that good of a quarterback, that means we know he's not that good of a quarterback. Kyler Murray is one of those guys who's going to continue to frustrate guys who gamble on football like me for the rest of time because he can always impact any game with his legs. And now with the skilled position players he's got on the outside, Marvin Harrison showed what a game breaker he is. That's never a fun team to have money against. But do I also feel like having money on a guy like Kyler Murray? I would say no. So I give him kind of that middle of the pack, like C kind of grade, maybe a C plus because there's more upside than downside with him. And we're still kind of new into the season. But will Kyler Murray stay healthy for an entire season? I severely doubt that. And can I count on him to play? I think that what kind of happens is that, are you a starting quarterback in the NFL? Yes. But do I ever think Kyler Murray can win a Super Bowl? I would say the answer is no. That doesn't mean that he's a bad quarterback necessarily, but I think that he's going to be one of those guys that is entertaining enough and makes things interesting enough that the Cardinals are always a little bit scary. I mean, he was moving the ball well on the Bills. If he sees an open Marvin Harrison, the Cardinals are 2-0 right now. They beat the fucking brakes off the Rams yesterday. That might be more about the Rams than it is on the Cardinals, but he gives them a chance to win. And I guess that's the best I can say about Kyler Murray. But I would say if he's up against an equal part, I don't count on him to match scores necessarily. So that's why I give him that kind of middle of the pack rating there. Let me actually pull these up in alphabetical order here. I'm probably, yeah, well, I've never pretended to be a great host, which is maybe why I shouldn't do this stuff live, but whatever, I'm putting it out there. You can do it better. You put it on your own show. I'd be happy to see you do it. All right, so we're going to go now. I'll just go by conference. So now we'll stay in the NFC West. I'll go to the St. Louis Rams. Matt Stafford, I think, is one of the best quarterbacks still in the NFL. In fact, it's kind of my way of saying how the quality of play has gone down is that I think that Matt Stafford is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL on actual quarterback playing ability, which I don't think I would have said during the actual prime of his career, but it's amazing how no offensive line. I mean, what he did last week in losing by a field goal to the Lions, I thought was as impressive as some quarterbacks that won a game, having no offensive line and only one receiver to throw to, and having an opportunity to win a game on the road against a team that the quality of the Lions. That was pretty impressive to me. Losing that wide receiver, the Rams just have absolutely nothing. And him, the one thing that I guess I can say is good about a quarterback with mobility is it can help out with a bad offensive line, assuming that quarterback actually knows how to move around in the pocket. But Stafford, I'm not going to really put too much faith in how well the Rams are going to do the rest of the year, given the injuries that they have. But I still think Stafford is a quality quarterback. And if people ever actually traded for quarterbacks, he could probably help a contender down the stretch. But this isn't baseball. This is football. 49ers, it's always going to be a polarizing topic with Brock Purdy. That was, you saw in week, well, I think you kind of saw this a little bit in week 1, actually. The fact that the 49ers were able to move the ball was kind of speaking to good Brock Purdy, but the fact that they finished with as many field goals as they did was bad Brock Purdy. Yesterday was kind of showing that Brock Purdy necessarily can't go out there and carry you to a victory that much. We're seeing the impact of Christian McCaffrey, which, hey, maybe Christian McCaffrey is slowly kind of showing maybe he's not going to win an MVP this year, but it does show that maybe a running back does matter a little bit more in the MVP discussion when the 49ers are a night and day team on offense without Christian McCaffrey. It's amazing how a versatile playmaker like himself that lines up in the backfield, how much of a nightmare that creates for the opposition. Purdy is, I still think, is at least a starting quarterback in the NFL, but I think that the problem that's going to happen with him is that because he's not really getting paid that much money, there's a lot of talent around him. Eventually, a decision is going to have to be made whether or not to pay him. And once you pay him, the talent around him is going to drop. And I just don't think that he's going to be quite that quarterback when that does happen. But he still is on the starting caliber quarterback. Seahawks, we're going to get to round up the NFC West. Geno Smith. Geno Smith is the example as to why we should not, or Geno Smith is the example as to why we should actually develop backup quarterbacks into starting quarterbacks in the NFL, because the circumstances under which he is playing, he has probably the worst offensive line. I'm not going to sit here and say I know the Rams offensive line versus the Seahawks offensive line so well, but I'm just going to go on the fact that the Seahawks almost gave up 3 safeties in one half last week. That's really not that good. And looking at the lack of rushing production they're getting, that also tells me it's not a very strong offensive line. And when you can't run the ball, it makes it very, very difficult to pass. But Geno Smith has really been through shit his entire life, so he's kind of adept to it and being able to will his team to a victory. I mean, we don't know exactly what to think about the Patriots just yet, because the perception was that they were going to be lucky to win 2 or 3 games this year, and now they've gone on and they've actually won. They won their first game against the Bengals team that looked pretty solid against the Chiefs. And then now we have it where they had every ability to win a game. They could almost be 2-0. It could be one of those things that maybe Belichick had lost his fastball and that maybe Gerard Mayo is an upgrade at the coaching position. Also, maybe just not having Mac Jones at quarterback, or what the fucking hell's the other guy's name? Bailey Zappi. Maybe just having, again, one of those career backup quarterbacks over the next young thing, a guy like Jacoby Brissett. There might be something to a guy not throwing the game away and just keeping you in the game. I think back to, well, I'll get to him at some point, actually. A different guy reminds me of that. We're going to move on over to the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. There's only been one game of Kirk Cousins, but it wasn't very good. He looks like he still is recovering from an Achilles injury. And the fact that he's playing on Monday Night Football tonight against the Eagles, I never know if I'm ever going to feel good about saying the sentence, I decided to wager my money on Kirk Cousins in primetime in Philadelphia. Because the last time I actually bet against Kirk Cousins against the Eagles in Philadelphia when he was playing for the Vikings, it was one of those cases where I felt like I lost money because I only had a little bit of money on the Eagles. I don't necessarily see things. I mean, he didn't. I believe the story I heard is that the Falcons didn't do one play action pass last week. So if I know that, I'm sure the Eagles know that. But we'll see. I mean, I'll get to the Eagles at some point, actually, as well. The Carolina Panthers, they're in the running for the worst fate of this because there's no point in playing. I mean, I guess you play Andy Dalton and you can at least try and feign some competitive, you're trying to stay competitive, and then maybe you move to Bryce Young. Bryce Young, it's one of those things of he's just seems like he's in a level over his head. The biggest praise we could say about Bryce Young, because the size is no mystery. That was always something we knew about him in college. But the thing that separated him, that made him possibly the number one pick, was his poise that he showed in college. Now, again, maybe it's easier to be a little more relaxed when you have the best offensive line prospects in the country and the best wide receivers in the country. But Bryce Young looks the opposite of poise. There was the play he rolled out where he could have thrown the ball away, and there was a defender about like 3 yards away from him, and he cocked back to throw, and then the guy just sacked him. Just total lack of awareness, or maybe the poise factor was just too much, but it just seems like the game moves way too fast for him. Also, just again, from the eyeball perspective, kind of the same I get with with Kyler Murray. I forgot to mention this with the Cardinals. To give you an idea of his size, his helmet just almost looks like it doesn't belong on him. His helmet looks almost too big for him because of the size of his helmet compared to his body versus every other player in the league. That's just an observation I have on him. But with the Panthers, I just find it hard to believe that if I ever saw Bryce Young in a uniform standing next to an entire huddle of NFL players, that I would ever think, yeah, this is going to work out. But they're in the bottom of this. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And Derek Carr, I have never really thought very highly of. And now suddenly Derek Carr, every drive that he has run so far this season with the Saints, they have scored every drive. Even in the first half when they were up 2 scores early on the Cowboys, my whole thinking was just that, okay, the Cowboys get the ball out of the second half. As long as they can keep it within a 1-score game by halftime, they'll be good. The Saints can't keep scoring was actually the mindset that I had, which is insanity for me because I'm of the belief of that, you can make a lot of money following a streak. You can only win once going against it. So I should have been saying, well, the Saints are just going to score. In fact, I want to know what if you started off by betting every Saints drive was going to end in an offensive score and then ran it back, you're probably a millionaire by now, or DraftKings has shut down your account or something. But Saints are impressing. And going into the season, people was kind of saying, that they had one of the worst coach quarterback combos out there. Last year, the Saints, the whole reason that everyone picked them as the default team to win the NFC South was because they were going to be playing against one of the worst set of quarterbacks in the schedule, and they still couldn't have a winning season last year. But, if Kamara is going to do that and Carr is going to not fuck things up and play at the level he's playing, look out. So I don't want to, I'm not going to go too crazy over 2 games, but they're definitely a team that's trending up. And Derek Carr is kind of, I would say, in like that B class of quarterbacks right now. I'm going to move same thing there on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Baker Mayfield. It's wild that he's kind of found himself in a position where he's playing like a guy. Now it's one of those, maybe we shouldn't give up on quarterbacks immediately the way that we have been in the past, but the Baker reclamation project, it just seems like that maybe this is what happens when a guy matures, when he grows up. I don't know, but he certainly is a gamer, and he certainly has the will. The thing that was always the thing that killed me with Baker is that he played a really good first 3 quarters. And if you looked at the splits on him in the 4th quarter, he became a different quarterback for all the wrong reasons. And that's not really been the case so far. So let's see. He's trending in that upward direction, where Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr are kind of in like that B level of quarterbacks, I would say. We're going to shift this one over to the NFC North now. We're going to start with the Bears. Caleb Williams, I said this to a friend just recently. Caleb Williams, I don't have anything against him as a person. I find his personality and the way he is to be a little annoying, but that could just be a generational thing. Again, I'm turning into a salty old man as I'm at the ripe age of 39, and Caleb Williams is 21-year-old, and I just think of the 21-year-olds I come in contact with, the difference of how we are. It is what it is. I don't have anything against him as a human being. I don't think he's a bad person or anything. But I find myself rooting against him, and I'm not rooting against him as a personal level. I'm rooting against him based on the way that he was presented to me. Like I have to remind myself that television coverage is not necessarily for people the way I consider myself. I consider myself to be an above average knowledge sports fan and the ability to evaluate talents, just because I've been doing it for so long now, and because, I have a financial stake in a lot of this stuff, and you tend to learn your lesson when guys make you money and lose you money. Caleb Williams, the college quarterback, certainly was a phenom and a freak, and I understand exactly why people were into that shit. But I just didn't see the way that was going to translate necessarily to the NFL, at least at the rate or the way it was presented to me. Last year, there was talk of that Caleb Williams could have joined teams and lead them to the playoffs. We are seeing that it's just not the case. You can't just walk from one to the other, or you can if you're a certain other quarterback, but he's got a long way to go. Now, you do see certain things about him that, I get, his mobility is something else. He does have tremendous arm talent, but there's a lot more to it than just those two things. And I think that for starters, the understanding of a pro style offense. I mean, they were even saying it in the broadcast. He said that, hey, I'm willing to play different. I'm not going to do the off the script stuff. Well, you shouldn't be learning how to do that at this level. It's not going to go very well. And we're seeing that right now where, the idea of that one interception where he threw it into triple coverage. And yes, that is a play that he probably makes into a touchdown in the college. And that is the big difference there. I look at this as from the baseball perspective of that. I am not saying that Caleb Williams is not going to be an all-star at some point in his life, but if it was in the MLB kind of the baseball realm of things, there's a reason why they start you off in single A and double A and you work your way up to the big leagues. He looks like he's somebody that needs to work through some things at the lower levels before he tries it out at the higher levels. Not giving up on the guy, and the team clearly has his back, but I will also say it seemed like the Texans really, 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 really wanted to put some hits on Caleb Williams. So I don't know if he has the respect of people around the league, but he certainly has the respect of his team, which that's one of the most important things as a quarterback. So that might help him out going forward. But he is very, very, very raw. The things that it looks like he can do, will he ever get to do? We will have to remain to be seen, because offensive line looks a little shaky, not really able to run the ball. For right now, I mean, the way they're tossing him up there, I'm going to I had this was part of a same game parlay I played last night. I know I speak of the evils of parlays, but do as I say, not as I do. I had both Rome Odunze under 41.5 yards and DJ Moore under 69.5 yards. Look, Caleb is only able to get passes off to the wide or to the tight ends and to the running backs, it seems like, and not Cole Kmet, by the way. Greg or Gerald Everett was getting a decent amount of targets. It seemed like that was which was to the Greenwich fantasy football players, but fuck them, they're losers anyways. So not all of you, just saying most of you. Let's see. We're going to move on now to the Lions. Jared Goff, they won last week, but he just wasn't that impressive. And I think, he's in that B class of quarterback of where I don't think Goff is going to lose you a game as much anymore, but you did see where at that next level of things, what happens is that he kind of becomes a 20-20 quarterback, is what they call it, where he can move the ball from one end of the field to the other. And they kind of broke that down last night during the Texans and the Bears game about how it's a different world once you get inside the 20. This is the issue where if you don't have a great arm and you don't have amazing athletic ability, the red zone does get tough unless you are just a master of a command field general to understand how to manipulate the defense. Jared Goff is none of the above on all of those, and it does seem like they do struggle a little bit in the red zone, which is probably why the Lions are always apt to take 4 downs instead of 3 downs. But Goff is, he's in that B class of quarterback. I think that you're going to hear a lot of guys, I'm going to say, are in that B class of quarterback where they may be some of the better quarterbacks playing in today's league, but as far as in the grand scheme of things, how they would rate, I don't know. Like, that's the thing that happens where we're taking 5 quarterbacks a year in the first round of the NFL draft. But if you ask talent evaluators, they're not necessarily saying these guys have first round grades, which, it's a problem that's perpetuating itself when you keep drafting them because we keep having these guys out there. All right, let's move on to the next set of teams. The Packers. Well, they won with Malik Willis. It was one of those things that I hate sometimes my own. Your eyes can lie to you. And all I know is that when I was looking through numbers and the way that betting patterns line up, I even texted this to a few people. I was like, the Packers look like they're the play today, which also led me to believe that it wasn't going to be because of Malik Willis. It was going to be because of Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs goes off. I have really no action on that whatsoever. And the Packers win the game, not because of Malik Willis, because they had him play glorified game manager. He went 12 of 14 for like 120 yards, which is basically, hey, just move the ball forward. Don't lose the game for us. And he did that very well. And I have some optimism that the Packers could continue to win games without Jordan Love. This is the way I look at Jordan Love. I want to say he could be in that B class of quarterback. I don't know what Jordan Love's elite skill is. And in fact, up until about the halfway point of last year, we weren't even really sure what we had, which is maybe an idea that we need to pump the brakes on our attitudes on some of these quarterbacks. But really just a little playoff run there, and all of a sudden he's a franchise quarterback. Like, I'm just weird. Maybe I want to see it for a second season before I jump the gun and pay a guy a long-term contract. That's just me. I don't run an NFL team. I run a struggling podcast, so maybe they know a little better than I do. But I think the Packers, again, if you play solid defense and you can kind of, scheme some things out there, limit the mistakes, you can win doing that. I saw the Bills make the playoffs doing that with Tyrod Taylor before. And last, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings are an example I wanted to talk about. They're 2-0 right now. They were going to go into the season most likely with J.J. McCarthy as their starting quarterback. I don't want to say that an injury to him was one of the better things that happened, but I want to say it forced their hand and that they probably should have started the season with Sam Darnold because, again, you want teams to be competitive into the season for as long as they possibly can because once a team starts believing they can win, they might actually have a chance of winning a little bit more. When you start off with the rookie quarterback, you're kind of, I don't want to say setting yourself up. There was no way that J.J. McCarthy was more ready to play NFL quarterback this year than Sam Darnold. Now, jury is still out on Sam Darnold. Has he really ever been given a fair chance to succeed in this league? It's amazing how he can throw a 98-yard touchdown pass when one of the guys catching the ball for him is Justin Jefferson. I know he did make some little shaky plays down the stretch of that game, but probably no more than J.J. McCarthy would have made, I would say. And it's the way that it would have been nice to do, or the way that I've always grown accustomed to it, is that when you drafted a rookie quarterback, you had a stopgap backup quarterback, kind of veteran type, that at least, you kind of had the idea that maybe we'll compete a little bit this season. And once it seems like you're out of it, you switch it over to the rookie, or maybe you give him some little spot duty within games. So I think the Vikings having Sam Darnold instead of J.J. McCarthy is actually helping them out. Where I would say Darnold, he's in like that C- area where he's coming up from the D to the C-. And if he continues to win football games, then maybe I'll put him up higher. We don't know what his true ceiling is because he's never really been given a fair chance. But he's been highly touted from high school all the way up. So maybe there's a chance that he can do something. But 2-0 on the Vikings so far, and one of them being a victory against a quality football team. So again, I wouldn't think that if Sam Darnold was to lead the Vikings to a Super Bowl victory, I would be more than willing to go back to the top of the Golden Gate Bridge and then probably jump off of it. But he is a ginger. We do need some representation in this league other than Andy Dalton. So we're through we're through 2 divisions now. Let's move it on over to the NFC North. Or wait, I was at the NFC North. Or no, we're through 3 divisions now. NFC East, the Cowboys. It's just one of those things. Dak Prescott, we're going to start off with. He's better than most of the quarterbacks in the league. He's not as good as the good quarterbacks in the league. And the Cowboys, it's a stat that's been going on for so long that just write this one down. Here's the way to bet Cowboys games. If you bet the underdog in the Cowboys games, they win a lot more than they lose, or that you cash more tickets than you do lose. It's like something like 80% of that. And it always makes sense. This is how the Cowboys work. They always lose games that they're heavily favored in, that they have, or that we perceive that they have no business losing. And then they beat a couple good teams in the mix there. And then suddenly the Cowboys are there. Dak Prescott, I don't know what more we need to do or what more we need to see, but he is in the top half. I mean, he's a top 10 quarterback, as sad as that sounds. You don't like the idea of thinking of Dak Prescott as a top 10 quarterback until you start looking at the rest of the quarterbacks in the league. Let's go on now to, we're in the NFC East. The Giants, Daniel Jones. Good God. I'm somebody I'll eat the crow on this one because I started liking Daniel Jones 2 years ago when he led them to the playoffs. I listened to a show. It's the, what's it called? The Beating the Book podcast with Gil Alexander. They have Chris Andrews, who's he was a sportsbook director at one of the major sportsbooks in Vegas. And I always took a lot of stock into this one story that when they fired the most recent coach for the Giants before they hired, what's his face? Daboll. On the way out the door, he wanted to say that, Daniel Jones is a tough son of a bitch. And he read a lot into saying that of all the things you could say on your way out, the fact you managed to make a compliment of that one. And I do like the idea of a tough quarterback. And during that season that Daniel Jones was running hot, I was kind of saying to myself that, Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver I've seen since Sterling Sharp. Well, congratulations, Xander. I appreciate your input on that one. Now, Daniel Jones, I kind of started looking at him as that he was white Cam Newton. He's always falling forward, maybe not the most gifted of passers. I mean, he threw 2 touchdown passes yesterday. You can give him that one, and he had some bad drops going there. As somebody who bet the Giants yesterday, I really, really, really wish that I had known that they were going to fucking lose their kicker during that game. It's always fun when you lose money on somebody that is the first time that something has happened. And the Giants yesterday were the first NFL team to ever score 3 touchdowns, not give up a touchdown, and still lose the football game. When you score 3 touchdowns and you don't kick, you don't go for 2, or you have to go for 2 every time and you don't get them. Now, not getting the 2-point conversions, that's a whole different ball game that you didn't at least get one of them. But as somebody who wasn't watching the game and was just kind of game casting it casually and didn't know that they didn't have their kicker, I was very confused why they went forward on 4th and 4 from the 20 to not go up 3 on a rookie quarterback. The irony of this one is that they knew, or I don't want to say irony, but the unfortunate fate of this, the Giants apparently all week, I need to research things a little better, apparently. I really just kind of was looking at betting week 2 is let's bet the teams that nobody wants to bet. And the Giants I looked at as a team that nobody wanted to bet. There may have been a good reason for that. Apparently the Giants knew that they were going to possibly have an issue with the kicker, and they had an open roster spot and chose not to sign a kicker. And then they lose the kicker that was banged up to the opening kickoff for the rest of the game. So if I'd known that, I probably would have, no, I wouldn't have done anything. But the point of this is where I'm saying is that the irony is that the kicker that the Commanders had, they just signed during the week, and he kicked 7 field goals to beat them. So the Giants are abysmal in the front office. Not having a kicker is almost as bad as signing Daniel Jones to a 4-year contract. Eagles, we're going to see what happens tonight with Jalen Hurts. Before Jalen Hurts' MVP caliber season, I was under the impression he was not a good quarterback through watching him in college and just never really thought he was a good thrower, thought he was a runner. Then he did seem to change his mechanics up a little bit, and they did seem to have this wild, innovative offense going. But now that he doesn't have Jason Kelce, I don't think that the tush push is going to be going quite as well as it was. And at a certain point during the season last year, I remember saying to my buddy who's an Eagles fan, I was like, do I have to keep pretending that Jalen Hurts is actually a really good quarterback? Now, the Eagles are he's going to be held in that regard because I think the Eagles are going to be better than most teams in the NFC. I'm only through the NFC. If you've noticed, I hadn't said a lot of compliments about a lot of quarterbacks. Now, I don't know if that's going to be much better in the AFC because I think it's just bad across the board. But I think the NFC has got a lot of mediocre at best quarterbacks. So Hurts is always going to be in the playoffs, and we'll see. If they don't cover against the Falcons tonight, I'm going to probably really, really have a stronger opinion on them. But again, I probably would say Hurts is in that B class at best. We'll see how he does without A.J. Brown today. And then after that, we got the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, we've had, I don't know if I brought this up, but we've had 6 games from rookie quarterbacks so far this year, and no touchdown passes. He at least has had some rushing touchdowns. He is a very, very dynamic athlete. He does look like a good quarterback when I watch him. Same thing with Bryce Young. When I see him in an NFL jersey on the same field as other NFL players, I just really have a hard time believing that he is not one hard hit away from bad things happening. And I will give that as a kudos to Caleb Williams. Even through college, I have watched that motherfucker take some shots, and he keeps getting up every time. And it seems like the people enjoy hitting him very hard. But tough kid, keeps getting up and going through it. Jaden Daniels, we'll see. I just don't really have much faith in anything that goes on in Washington. That's not even just a football statement. That's also, this isn't a political show, but that's not I'm not taking a side on that one. They all suck and we're all fucked. But moving along, we're going to finally get to the AFC now. So we'll start with the AFC East. This is a wild statement right here. And if the Xander is still in this thread here, he might even reach out to me personally on this one. Josh Allen, he has not really had to do much this year, but I kind of feel like right now with quarterbacks in the NFL, it's Josh Allen and everybody else. And I don't know if it's because I moved out of Western New York and I'm not around Bills fans who, in a couple of years, there's going to be a high school football team that everybody's name is Joshua Allen something because of how much they love Josh Allen out in Buffalo. And as they should. I don't know of a quarterback that really, matches the city he plays for quite as much as Josh Allen does. It's just his command of the field. I just look at it as that he's not somebody I ever want to have money against. He scares the fuck out of you when you have money on him. But on 3rd and long, I just always feel like he's going to roll out and either take off and get me a first down or make a throw that's going to give me a chance of getting a first down. And 2-0, and he hasn't really had to show much yet, and which is good for him because I really feel like, and this is I want to have a guest on to really get this one answered at some point. I really feel like that Josh Allen and Bills fans, if we were to make this deal with the devil of that, hey, you're going to win one Super Bowl this season. It's going to be, and Josh Allen's career is going to be done after this season. He's going to literally have to sacrifice the rest of his career to win one Super Bowl, and it's going to be this year. Would you sign up for that deal? And I'm pretty sure all of Buffalo and Josh Allen would be like, where do we sign? And that's the way I think they're going to play it out. So kudos to him. And I honestly think he's the best quarterback going in the league right now. Below him, the Dolphins, who their quarterback situation is a little dicey. I don't think that's based on the way that the gambling markets are set up. I do believe that Tua is coming back. Tua is it's funny to say this about a guy who has the issues he has going on. He's kind of your schoolyard bully. He's really, really good at picking on the weak opposition. But when you put him up against a worthy adversary, it just doesn't seem to go very well for him. Coach Jason Brown shared a really, really, really good breakdown of the pick six that he threw and how, there's a lot going on that one, that his arm is not strong enough to throw it out of bounds was why that ball was run back the other way. But then also, too, his lack of being able to go off script, where it was very clear with the way that play was lined up that his intended target was the one solo receiver on the right side. And you can see that there are 3 defenders on that side of the field. And then on the other side of the field, there's obviously probably a blitzer coming, and there's going to be a little bit of a confusion mismatch with the coverages there. And he doesn't even look to that side of the field. By the time he looks to that side of the field, it's too late. The pressure is in his face. And to Tua, like I said before that game, I was just like, the Dolphins just forget how to play football when they see that Bills jersey. The one game that they won with Tua there is the weirdest box score you're ever going to see. And most football games that Tua starts out against the Bills, he does not finish. Now, I'm not going to go with this whole idea that Tua's brain is soup or anything already, but it is scary that when you run into, first off, your idea to try to truck a 200-pound safety when you can just slide is one thing. But when you hurt yourself, and I don't say this, Al Michaels got shit for this. I had already made a post about it beforehand, so I'll say it again. It was very ironic that Tua's career could have possibly come to an end by trying to lower his shoulder into Damar Hamlin's chest, considering what happened the last time I saw somebody lower their shoulder into Damar Hamlin's chest. But Tua gave himself a concussion. That was nothing coming from Damar Hamlin. And it just shows he is a little fragile. And it's not even just on the concussion end. He has only played 1 year of football where he has not missed any time during the season. But it looks like he's going to probably come back there. They can't, Skylar Thompson, and the fact that Mike McDaniel is out there saying that he's not going to change anything in the offense with Skylar Thompson, probably not a good idea. You can't tell me, that they're the same quarterback. For starters, I think one of them is left-handed, one of them is right-handed. If that doesn't even change something about your offense, then, well, maybe Mike McDaniel just isn't a football coach. He's an offensive coordinator. He certainly doesn't look like a football coach, but they, don't judge a book by its cover. Patriots, they're just, Jacoby Brissett is your classic, what I mentioned, your stopgap quarterback. They're playing it the way that I would like to play it, is that, hey, they're competitive right now. He is not going to lose them any games necessarily. Just don't ask him to necessarily win you a game. Jacoby Brissett always seems like he's liked by his teammates, is something I have noticed, which is kind of funny because the guy that replaced him in Cleveland is probably one of the most disliked by his teammates, but it's just kind of disliked by everybody because, well, if what he did is true, and there's enough allegations that at least one of them probably has to be true. He's really not a very good guy, but I'm not the judge, jury, or the executioner on that one. I just care about how he plays football, and he doesn't play football that good. We'll get back to him later. But, Jacoby Brissett makes the Patriots frisky. They have to play a perfect style of football. They have to play from ahead. They can't play from behind probably, but at least it keeps things interesting. And then eventually when they fall out of it, we'll get to see Drake May a little bit. Maybe Drake May is benefiting from practicing against an NFL defense week in, week out, and will look a little better when he starts joining the NFL field than his rookie counterparts have this year. That's just a thought. We'll see. I don't know. Now we're going to go on to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers. Let's see. My card was with the NFL on notes today. Marvin Harrison Jr. looking like a young Randy Moss. Oh, he looks like more than a young Randy Moss. He's an absolute freak. And what scares me is that I heard somebody say that there's a kid at Ohio State right now that might be better than Marvin Harrison Jr., but just the name alone, you've got the genetics. And then when you're also, I haven't seen what Marvin Harrison's wife looks like, but is she like 6'9" or something? Because way bigger than his father. And yeah, he's give that guy the ball. He looks like one of the old school number one wide receivers that have, the guys, when we say that we can't beat two high safeties, it's they used to beat it by throwing to guys like that, because it doesn't matter if there's two or three guys around a guy like Marvin Harrison. Nobody is going up to get it like he is. It's just a matter if little Kyler can see him. But Buda Baker is also another player I love. Your Cardinals are on notice because the Rams, they're out of it. And if the 49ers don't have Christian McCaffrey, they're a very, very normal team. And the Seahawks with that offensive line, Champy, you might be onto something. In fact, let's check a little quick look at, I have done some very, very dumb things with money in my life, but I didn't bet any of them on the St. Louis Cardinals this year. Let's see what we could get. Just going to take a look right now, what I could get on the Arizona Cardinals to, one, make the playoffs, but two, to win their division. Let's just take a look here. I'm going to use FanDuel for this one. They're not a sponsor or anything. I just, they're the easiest one to get to for some of this shit sometime. So let's see. We're going to go playoffs. Arizona Cardinals make the playoffs. Plus 205. That's pretty fucking sexy, I must say. And then let's see, to win their division. Oh, if they're plus 205 for that, they're going to be sexy. Arizona plus 600. I think the champion, you may have just talked me into something. I hope you're still on here. I'm going to fire some. I'm going to shop those lines a little bit. I might put something on that, because of most of the quarterbacks I mentioned in the NFC, I think that I said some better things about Kyler Murray than I said about some of the others. But Champy, kudos to that one for you. If I win something, I'll have to hook me up with your Venmo. So we're going to look at Cardinals plus 205 to make the play. Those are the Cardinals make the playoffs. Cardinals. Yeah, let's take a flyer on that one. I like the idea of that one. The Jets, 1-1. Rodgers. It's, we'll see what happens. Their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed against the 49ers. And I don't know if that's going to get much better, because CJ Mosley is out. Jermaine Johnson is out. And it just looks like they need to kind of come together on defense. Rodgers, the one thing I kind of got out of him is that, that one drive, and I hate that it's just one drive, but the one drive he had against the Niners just showed his command of things, where it's a weird feeling, or the thing I get about Rodgers and Stafford and even CJ Stroud. It's relieving to see a guy drop back on third down and knowing exactly where he's going to go with the ball and not necessarily have to always make it happen. And that's what I get out of Rodgers. And as long as he's one of those guys, as long as he's standing upright, when they get to that next level of the playoffs, I actually, he does he's kind of a letdown. And it is always kind of funny too. Like, I've been hearing this hypothetical. People hate Aaron Rodgers so much. I kind of like him because he's an asshole. That maybe that isn't the greatest endorsement about myself. But Aaron Rodgers, they want to say now of the hypothetical of what if he didn't win a Super Bowl, which, by the way, if he had never won a Super Bowl, God, ESPN would almost have to have its own fucking network for that type of shit at this point. But, Rodgers, he's not in the A class anymore. He's in that B, maybe B minus even kind of class. But at the end of the day, if you give Rodgers the ball and he's got a receiver like Garrett Wilson that he trusts, he's got a chance to, if he's within a score, you're never going to feel good having money against him. That's just the way I phrase that. And we'll see if he holds up throughout the year. All right, moving along here I think we're through the NFC East. Okay. We're in the AFC North. We're first at the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. It's a dicey subject as a white guy if you want to talk about it, because if I say that I don't think Lamar Jackson is that great of a quarterback, then you get this. He's kind of like he's a better Kyler Murray in the sense of that, well, maybe it's just because he's actually a little bigger than Kyler Murray, but he's always going to be able to run around, make things exciting. But can you rely on him to make big throws at the right time? I just can't. And it's a frustrating thing. And the guy's got 2 MVPs. And yes, he is a nightmare. I get that. Players that play against him will tell you one story, but I just don't. I would be willing to take the bet right now. I bet you that Lamar Jackson never even plays in a Super Bowl, let alone wins a Super Bowl. That's the bet. I would look at that. Lamar's in that B-, C+ kind of rating. He's just a tick below Rodgers, but he's always scary. Kind of in that bully thing. You play a team that's not very well coached or well put together, he's probably going to make it a nightmare for them on defense. The Raiders, we'll talk about their offense in just a little bit, but the strong suit of their defense is always, or their team is always going to be their defensive-minded head coach, and their best player on their team is a defensive player, and he's relentless too. I love watching Max Crosby, and he made some big plays that changed that game. But Lamar, I just can't trust even just their set of receivers they have on the team. Their offense, it doesn't look like anything makes sense as the way it'll go. And that's usually up to the quarterback making that work. We'll see how it goes. But they're 0-2 right now, off to a very rocky start. We're going to move on from the Ravens to the Bengals. Joe Burrow, I'm going to say he's in that B class. I don't want to give him an A. And I did see a tweet that got me thinking on Joe Burrow a lot. It's amazing how Joe Burrow losing a Super Bowl did more for his career than Matthew Stafford actually winning that Super Bowl. And Joe Burrow's got a real interesting career to kind of think of, because probably the best college football season ever put together, but probably also one of the best college football offensive rosters that was ever put together. Just a total cheat code. Look at the guys that were on that team and look at the NFL. You're going to recognize some real game changers on there, and they had him at quarterback. Gets to the NFL, he is a little bit weak of an offensive line. I do like that he's a guy that does seem to know where he's going with the ball a lot of the times. But when he doesn't have the second wide receiver like T. Higgins, which eventually he's not going to have, looks a little bit more ordinary. Now, again, he's been dealing with some injuries, but even in that postseason run that Joe Burrow had to the Super Bowl, let's even think back on those games. The Derek Carr moves the Raiders all the way down the field, lays a turd in the red zone. That's gets them through game 1 there. Nothing really too wild and crazy there. The game that he won against the Tennessee Titans, he was sacked like 6-7 times or something outlandish. But Ryan Tannehill just couldn't help himself and kept throwing the ball to the Bengals, and they win that game. And I don't think they scored a ton of points. And then they were getting their doors blown off in Kansas City. And then that game kind of is one of those ones where you can't really say anything negative about the golden boy, Patrick Mahomes, but that was more of Mahomes losing that game than Joe Burrow winning that game. Finds himself in a Super Bowl, and let's be real about that Super Bowl. If Odell Beckham doesn't get hurt in that game, I think that the Rams were going to boat race the Bengals. And I say that as somebody who bet on the Bengals in that game. I was really, really, really clutching my pearls early, but then when Beckham went down, not that I ever root for someone's injury, but in a gambler's interest, I was very happy to see that. But Burrow, again, he's in like that B+ rating. We'll see. Hopefully he gets healthy as time goes on. There was a whole story I heard that he couldn't throw. He didn't practice 3 consecutive days at any point in time in the summer. As we're finding out, maybe, because I don't want to make these all total, absolutes. We'll do some updated rankings on this where maybe I'll kind of, revisit or trending up, trending down or something. But maybe these guys actually, there is some value in practice and playing in preseason, because these games right now kind of are an early extension of the preseason. I'm really not going to be laying any heavy money on games until about week 6, until, I can only confirm some beliefs right now, but I'm not really finding out anything new week to week at the moment. Okay, so we move on next to the Browns. Okay, Browns, they quarterback situation. Deshaun Watson, and this is the worst thing about it. Before everything happens, I thought Deshaun Watson was one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL from a playing standpoint. And honestly, if he still played remotely as good as he did when he played in Houston, I might be able to kind of not overlook necessarily, but I wouldn't feel as bad about putting money on him. Yesterday, the one big play that I had was good money line pick I had was the Browns. And it didn't feel good doing it, but I was just kind of doing it from the mindset of that they're one of the last teams that anyone wants to put money on. Facing the Dallas Cowboys pass rush he was never had a chance, and that's not a good way to start off your season. And we're going to talk about the guy on the other side of that game in a little bit, but I didn't have the fear of the Jaguars causing him to do dumb shits. He still does dumb shit. They had a bad clock management situation at the end of that game, but it's just such an amazing fall from grace because, again, he was one of those you didn't want to have money against guys, and him doing what he did in college and to see it all just, personally and professionally go to shit as bad as it did. It's not good. I mean, but he's like in that like C- D range where we'll see. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Browns get Nick Chubb back, but they do have weapons. And if he can find some type of rhythm within himself, they do have a game changer on the other side of the ball in Myles Garrett. I look at them as one of those teams where they can, they are in any game based on that defense, but they can also lose any game because of that quarterback, and the defense, doesn't always show up. We're going to go on to the next. Is that going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers? Everybody has been like waiting for again, I always use that expression, and I didn't have any action in this one, but that, you can make a lot of money following a streak. You can only win once going against it, and insert Mike Tomlin and his above 500 or never finishing with a below 500 record. He really might be the best coach ever because he probably hasn't had an NFL quality starting quarterback in 5 years now. The way that he's managed some of the biggest troubled player. I mean, he got the best out of Antonio Brown and did it for a long time. Everyone likes to believe that Antonio Brown already has CTE going. No, maybe he's just always kind of been a fucking shithead throughout most of his life. And there's a reason why he ended up at Central Michigan. And there was a reason why he was a late round draft pick and walked right into the NFL and was instantly a producer. It looks like the stuff that he does on tape, it looks like they would have caught up into this guy. Maybe there's always been some off the field stuff, and maybe he was good about mitigating that or keeping in line. But he's they built up the defense, and I mean, I think the Steelers are going to continue to do this because when you have nothing but bad quarterbacks across the league and you have a good defense, you're going to force bad quarterbacks into making bad decisions, and they take away the run game from everybody. The Steelers play a style of football that I just really enjoy, and their quarterback situation is if they can get their quarterbacks to play within themselves and not make mistakes, like Justin Fields is a threat to move the ball. It's kind of that same, Lamar Jackson thing, but they don't rely on him to be a thrower. It's a good thing that George Pickens can catch most any ball that shouldn't be caught because he doesn't necessarily always have the most accuracy. But if Najee Harris can actually move forward and the Steelers' offensive line is even remotely better than it's been, and they're off to a head start in this division, which I think is wide open. I think that the outlook for the Steelers is good. The quarterback situation, though, they're still kind of in that C- thing. I don't know how I would feel if the Steelers were to fall behind, which they have yet to do this year, I believe. So as long as they're playing from ahead, they're good, but not feeling the greatest about the quarterback situation going on there. AFC South, CJ Stroud. I think it's really him and Josh Allen right now. There's another guy we'll talk about in a couple minutes. It's just wild and crazy to me that in a game where we have another generational prospect, and whenever he plays against Trevor Lawrence, I'm always reminded of that. We've had how many generational talents in the past 5 or so years. And a generational talent, I think on its own definition, there can only actually be one. And then CJ Stroud, who was never, ever even considered to be he wasn't even definitively the number one pick. So that's how I know he wasn't held in that regard. And to watch him you almost can't even, he makes everybody else look bad in the sense you can't have the excuse, he's a kid, he's going to get better because, his first game last year was against the Ravens, who ended up being really, really studly. And he was able to move the ball down the field. But some of the throws that he is making, the touch he's got on his ball, the comfort he has in his offense, the only concern I have for the Texans offense is that they might just have too many mouths to feed and people could get, I'm not even saying Stephon Diggs, but I'm just saying there's not enough balls to necessarily go around for all the talent that's there, but they have a hell of a trigger guy. I think the best throw that he made last night was the ball that Tank Dell dropped over the middle of the field when I love that he's the sense of that we went from mobile quarterbacks to running quarterbacks. And the difference between the mobile quarterback and the running quarterback is that CJ Stroud runs to find places to throw. He has the ability to take off for a first down if he wants to. He had one rushing attempt last night, and it was a kneel down, I believe. So I think the sky's the limit for the Texans and CJ Stroud. And I'm going to say positively about him in the quarterback level. He's up there with Josh Allen for me at this point. Where do we go now? Colts. I should have known this one. This was part of the other reason that I didn't put money on the Packers. Part of it was because they had Malik Willis on there, but you got to actually not just look at the scores and look at actually how the game went out, because if you do a quick glance, you looked at week one, the Colts lost 29-27 to the Texans. Game wasn't really that close. And even if you look you look at the total yardages and stuff, Anthony Richardson down is not a very good quarterback. The thing is that he's going to probably make like 10 to 15 absolutely fucking ungodly plays that is going to keep him staying the quarterback maybe, or just keep us, touting him up there. But the fact that, he's not even a 50% passer right now this season, and it's not like it's unprecedented. He wasn't a very good passer in the SEC, but a little bit of fool's gold there. And if Jonathan Taylor's not going to get any running there, he's going to be an exciting player to watch, but I won't be shocked. I don't expect Anthony Richardson to win a lot of games, I'll just say, but he certainly is an amazing athlete and a very raw talent. Him and Caleb are just kind of in that sense of that they're going to Caleb hasn't even had any real wow plays yet this year. Anthony Richardson at least gets those. Still kind of a rookie if you want to look at it this way, because based on how little he played last year. But I kind of said when I saw the highlight, I'm like, that was a hell of a play, but I don't like seeing a young quarterback getting rewarded for throwing off their back foot. I compare it to when you're playing golf with somebody and they hit a perfect lob wedge shot. It's almost in the best interest that they did that, because if there's someone you play against routinely, for every lob wedge they hit perfectly, they're going to have like 3 or 4 that they completely fucking miss on. So it's a good match play weapon for your opponent. All right, so we got there. Now we're going to get to one of my favorites, talk about Trevor Lawrence. As I said to my buddy with Trevor Lawrence, what are we in, like year 5 right now or something with him? We give him all the excuses. We threw away his rookie year because of the Urban Meyer thing. Okay. As I said, if we don't know if you're good, that means we know that you're not good. And that's the way I feel about Trevor Lawrence. And I look at him as that he's going to have a really good game one week. And it's going to remind me of the way that people talked about Adam Wainwright of the Cardinals. I am a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan, and I was not always the biggest Adam Wainwright fan. It's always like, or even like Andrew Luck got this to make it a football comparison, is that you give them all this praise before they do anything and build them up this way. You make every excuse for why they're not doing good. And then when they do something good, you're like, yep, that's why we're all about him. But the fact that we even go on is where, like, I heard somebody going on today about how Trevor Lawrence, and the playoff comeback that he had. The playoff comeback that he had, you mean the playoff choke job that Brandon Staley pulled off is the way that most people remember it? I didn't look at that as much as a Jaguars comeback as the Chargers meltdown by all accounts. The Joey Bosa penalty. There was a lot of, just week to week, I just don't find Trevor Lawrence to be, I've never been watching and saying that he is remotely anywhere near the hype. So I'm going to be probably overly critical of him. I don't even think that Trevor Lawrence would still be starting in the NFL if he was drafted where he was drafted like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Like maybe it's the long hair thing, but I just can't get Blaine Gabbert out of my head when I watch Trevor Lawrence. Again, at this point in time, we should fucking know with you, and we don't know. And CJ Stroud just makes you look bad because plays in the same division, kind of started with the same circumstances, or for a really, really much maligned fucking conference, organization. And is it impossible for people to find? Is it all because DeMeco Ryans is that good of a coach? Like, he's just one guy. They just, is he going to be the next fucking Bill Parcells or something that he could turn it around that much? Or is maybe that we are just overvalued. We just don't know how to evaluate the quarterback position. I don't know. But Trevor Lawrence, he was like looked at as like he was going to be the next Andrew Luck, and he's been fucking dog shit for most of his career, I would say. So the Jaguars are fucked. I love betting against them. Famous last words. They'll probably kill it next week. Titans, Will Levis. I think that you actually might be the worst quarterback in the NFL. The whole he kind of seemed like he leaned into that eccentric character thing coming out of Kentucky, like the whole uses mayonnaise and coffee stuff. Did have a smoke show girlfriend. So he's, got that going for him, which is nice, but it's like the fucking interception against the Bears I lost on that game was just one of the worst. I don't know what was worse, the interception or him kneeling and pouting down like a fucking petulant little child in there. Like, I can't believe that he's even still allowed to be the starting quarterback on that team. And then he had another fucking awful turnover yesterday. He is just not very good. And yeah, you're fucked with him. I'll look to bet against him as long as he's still playing starting quarterback there. Now we're into the AFC West. Bo Nix, I mean, Sean Payton looks like he's going to go down with him. I mean, what Bo Nix is like my age, I think, or something. Or, I mean, he's certainly been through the ringer in the college ranks. Most people kind of wondered about him as a first-round grade. I don't necessarily like to listen to most people, but Sean Payton is just, he's insistent and, he's a real genius. So he's going to go down with the ship swing on this one. Here's my observations on this one for Sean Payton. Again, he knows way more football than I'll ever know, but maybe because I only look at this from a gambler's perspective. But you're down 13-0. So you're down, essentially, you're down 2 scores. Definitely down 2 scores. This is going to be a general statement, but it's also going to play to him. Anytime you kick a field goal and you're down 2 scores and you're still down 2 scores, it's probably a bad decision. On 4th and 6 from the 20-yard line, he kicks a field goal down by 13 with like 11 minutes left. And then with like 2 minutes left, down by 10 on 4th and 5 from the 11-yard line, he kicks a field goal. Doesn't attempt an onside kick and gets the ball back with 8 seconds. How are you expected to ever win under those circumstances? I don't know, but Bo Nix, I mean, probably, again, usually when a guy who's a marginal first-round talent, I mean, again, I'm old enough to remember Carson Palmer being drafted in the first round as the first overall pick and it being announced as soon as they made the pick that he wasn't going to play that year. So, and he went on to have a hell of a career. I'm not saying it's always the way of going about things, but throwing him right into it is not maybe not the best idea just yet. Chiefs, Mahomes, I mean, I'm not going to be saying one of those guys that, he's got the refs on his side, but he does get away with a lot of sloppy football. And I think it's because of the pressure. Like, he's kind of got this like Tiger-like aura, like in golf, like how Tiger was leading down the stretch. It was over because he was in everybody else's head. I think that the mystique of Mahomes and the fact that people already believe, like, I think teams think that they're going to lose when Mahomes gets the ball. And because of that, they do dumb shit. And it just, I don't know, but I've really not been impressed. I will say that was nice seeing an actual deep, showing that you can throw over the top still every now and again to Rashee Rice, who probably shouldn't be playing in the NFL, but that's a different subject. But Mahomes, he's not in the Josh Allen, CJ Stroud class right now for me. I mean, he's got all of the achievements, but I don't like say he's holding the Chiefs back or anything. I just don't think the Chiefs offensively are quite the team that we think that they are. I think they're really being held together by their defense, and that Chris Jones is one of the most dominant defenders out there, and they've got a couple of great shutdown corners. So that's where let's say that Mahomes is in that A- class, or he's not as high as Josh Allen and Stroud for me so far this year. I'll just say that much. And then after him, we got my boy Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew, I mean, hey, I'll say this is that if you give this guy weapons, he's got Devontae Adams who fucking can catch any ball. Brock Bowers, this is the way I describe him. He runs like a wide receiver. He's built like a tight end. He looks fucking scary out there. So as long as they're in third and manageable, I think he's going to always be able to find one of those guys. Minshew can always move the ball up and down. And the fact when you have a game changer like Max Crosby, with Max Crosby, you're always going to be able to have a chance to have a difference maker there. He does not. He's one of the most relentless defenders. And, obviously gotten Lamar's grill, I think, twice yesterday, at least for 2 sacks. But Minshew, he can still always move the ball, it seems like. Don't necessarily, I mean, he actually kind of won you a game yesterday a little bit. I don't necessarily want to be in that position, but he can keep you in just about any game with the talent around him. I think Minshew is a little better than most people think. And Minshew is kind of one of those guys who you want to have around the league that you should have him ahead of, like last year with the Colts. If they had him ahead, and, he actually almost had the Colts in the playoffs. But playing him first and then, having Richardson behind and getting acclimated and learning a scheme and, getting comfortable and familiar around him, he's like that perfect quarterback to, hey, you don't have to, he's, what he is? He's like that perfect. It's the way I present myself to girls. I'm not the guy that you're looking for. I'm the guy you're looking for until you find the guy you're looking for. You can have a lot of fun with Gardner Minshew, but you don't want to get married necessarily. But I think that gets you like a solid C+, B- rating in my little system that I got going here. Not that I've been pretty steady throughout with it. And then last we wrap it up with is the the LA Chargers. Herbert, I hate agreeing with Emmanuel Acho, but I do agree to an extent that he is the social media quarterback of that. He looks the parts, but does he necessarily play the part? I don't know. He doesn't have the excuse of having Brandon Staley as a coach anymore. He does have Harbaugh now, but that's now, as we're seeing, it's not making him as productive as a passer, but it is making him a winner. Harbaugh will do whatever it takes to win, and it looks like that he's exploiting the ability to run the football in this NFL. And J.K. Dobbins having an absolute hell of a career and making everybody nervous with the fucking front flip there. And I'm going to give a little bit of a to the rating, I guess, go back to the Jets on this one. And a guy who I just look as that he should be a starting quarterback for a team in the NFL right now, it's Tyrod Taylor. Again, you're not winning a Super Bowl with Tyrod Taylor, but as I would say, for some of these teams out there that are hanging in the balance or maybe being held back by having a too risky quarterback or someone that is just a little too taking chances, Tyrod Taylor still seems like he can move the ball with any type of talent around him, or at least, he won't lose you a game. And I think that there's a couple teams, if they had him, they'd be much better off. But listen, I had to get something out there. I had to talk some NFL. I am going to probably start looking to put this out here in an audio format as well, too, and start posting it as a podcast, not just on the visual thing. And really need to get to some kind of schedule, because what's the point of having a channel if you don't really have a show that anyone knows what time to go to watch? And yeah, got to spend a little bit of money and invest in this thing. I appreciate anybody that tuned into this one. Thank you for tuning in. Give me a like, subscribe, share, anything, or, feel free to tell me what an idiot you think I am or compliment me. But Champy, I want to say that we work together as a group on this one. I'm really eyeballing the Cardinals, and maybe on the next episode, I'll post where I think the best odds are. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and thank you. Have a nice day. I'm going to stop talking because I'm ranting.